Hey guys, what is going on? All right, connected flop, out of position though with equity, gonna raise. Don't even really have time to explain what this video is gonna be because we're playing zone. Literally gonna go through what I think are sort of the most relevant data points in each hand and just play. So this might be a little light on commentary at some points, but that's just how it's going to be. If you have a question about something, ask in the comments. Hopefully I'll have a chance to get back to you, but I want to listen to a little bit of my out loud thought process, just so I can, just so I can review it and make sure things are going how I want them to be going. So this is as much a checkup for me, post my first 5,000 hand storm with my coach, which is what he's calling it, essentially going through. He pretty much looked through last 5,000 hands I played, picked out a bunch of hands he wanted to go over. We went over it, and now I'm trying to make sure that I'm implementing those changes correctly. This is going to be a check raise on the left. Low board, some equity. It's everything we need. I'm going to let it count down to like 10. I've noticed that like sometimes my instant check raises, I don't know. I feel like I should probably count to 5 on almost every play, but especially with check raises, like the instant check raise sometimes gets a little bit of skepticism. That ace is a pretty bad card, but we still have equity, and it should be slightly overfolded. However, I think we can cut it down to half pot and get similar results. This is going to be a check raise. It's not totally discoordinated, but we have some equity with our pair. Not sure what's going on here. I did just finish a quick little 10-minute meditation. I have some coffee. I have a little green smoothie drink thing. I had some pizza last night for the Super Bowl, so my stomach feels like pretty gross. Queen 9 out of position is going to be a fold. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. I've been playing exclusively zone, and there's things I like about it. One of the things I don't like is it's very hard to make videos. I like making videos because it forces me to talk through a little bit of thought process. I don't like making videos on zone because I don't have time to say even like very basic things. This would be a polarization error if I bet. And this will be a fold on the river. That is obviously a code red card. I think we're going to lose to a jack a lot here, a jack or a weak queen, but we're good. So just shows how passive people are. Yeah, that's why also if it's a bet, it's a fold. Yeah, if players aren't bluffing enough. It's going to be a raise. This looks small. Bump it up 25 cents. 5-6 suited. I'm not actually sure, so I'm going to fold. I don't know exactly how we want to play against the under the gun open, whether we want a flatting only range. This is so disconnected, and we have 2 overcards that I am going to stab. I think this is very close to not being a bet, and once we're called, we're just going to shut down. We can still win sometimes, I suppose, like a 9-10 or something like that, and this could be a bluff, but we don't really have any reason to think that. Also, the 6 could connect with the range that he's doing that with. See, just talking for 2 seconds let me almost screw that up. We do turn some equity. Barreling the ace high isn't great, but we're still going to do it. Hearts are good. Also disconnected, and we have equity. Obviously, that is good. Wait till it gets to about the 10-second mark and bet. King 4 is, I think King 3 is a fold, King 4 is an open. As far as my starting hands go. My raise first in range, fold. One thing I also always forget to do when I'm making videos is fold. But honestly, a lot of times it takes, the software doesn't pick up the fold until later on anyway. So it's not a huge deal. I do like to keep the game moving though. Get as many hands per hour as possible. This is, oh, there's a raise. And there's a lead. The donk lead's generally kind of weak, but because it's into 2 players and we don't have any strong equity draws, I'm just gonna muck on the left. It's fine. Again, I'm actually going to go ahead and 3-bet this because playing post flop for implieds against a short stack I don't think is as good. I'm not sure exactly what I should be thinking with the ace-4 as far as merits of calling versus folding versus a short stack. That makes it relatively easy. Whoa. Apologize if you can hear that background noise. My washing machine's like going off the rails over there. So hopefully that doesn't last too terribly long. Check, that'll be a fold. This is a little too connected to check raise. We do have a pair of 5s. Obviously we can't check fold. And if he barrels, the queen will connect with a fair bit of any betting range that he's going to have here. So the jack as well. So it'll actually be a check fold on the river. We'll show down against the 6 sometimes here. That'll suck, but we'll also just apparently win sometimes. One thing that I realize is a mistake I've just been throwing money away with a lot. I mean, just a consistent error that I have, not that I have found, but that has been shown to me, is pretty much just betting on mostly rivers, occasionally some turns, where I just don't have the fold equity that I think I have because players aren't capable of folding. Is pretty much what it comes down to. Because this guy's short and because we have it crushed, I'm going to check back this time. Sometimes players will, especially short stacks, they have a tendency to do some weird stuff. I'm tempted to actually raise here, but we'll just call. We'll call any river. That's fine. So that's what I was saying. There's this, probably the most money I've been making is the adjustment of, this is pretty close. If this guy, I'll just fold here. This is probably okay to call with just because it's a min raise. Pretty much call any 2 against min raise. Probably the most profitable adjustment I've made is in, I mean, this is literally just like today and yesterday, and it immediately has started making me money. And it is understanding sort of the volatility of fish and how to essentially understand how to play against fish that are taking volatile lines. Now, you might say like, well, how do you know it's a fish? Oh, yeah, there we go. Sorry, bet. You might say, well, how do you know it's a fish? You know, you're playing zone. You don't have any stats. 6, 7, 9. See, this is a spot where like it's really tempting to bluff. But I would expect to get called down here with like by like ace-4 if I bet. So as much as it looks like it's like fun to bet here, and he had it anyway, so it was not folding. Yeah, it's just sort of understanding how volatile donks are, and so there were. Yeah, it's something I'm still, I would say, integrating into my play, is understanding which lines from fish I need to be calling down with and which ones I can be overfolding, because there's just a massive distinction between those 2 spots really, where you want to be overfolding in some spots and in slightly different spots you want to be overcalling. So yeah, finding those different situations has been pretty important for me. So here, like, this is one of those spots where, like, if I would never bluff here because it just seems like they're calling. So I'm just gonna size up my bet and call it good, because like it's just a spot. I guess it's a feeling. It's just sort of a feeling that, like, look, if I was barreling here as a bluff, and I honestly not sure how many bluffs I would be barreling in that spot, but I'm sure there's some. Then this is actually a 4-bet. No, a 3-bet. Sorry. So I'm gonna 4-bet. That's fine. Yeah, anyway, maybe just a slightly more normal size would be better, but I just feel like once people call twice, they're not folding very often. So I might as well size up my bet, because by the time he calls twice, his range is kind of polarized to like hands that he's probably folding to any bet with and hands he's probably calling any bet with. This donk line, because we're like at the very bottom of our range, I'm not actually going to call down, but this is a spot where if I had pretty much any value hand that wasn't like underneath the board, I would call. Like, I would not be surprised if that guy was doing that with like 7-8. However, and a mistake I made earlier today that really helped me sort of define how to think about those situations, was a similar spot as that hand just was, where I called down with actually I think it was a pair of 6s, but they were on the board. And he ended up having like trip queens, and it was the same line. And there was another situation very similar where I had ace jack, where I had top pair, but he was like a guy like doubled the pot and then jammed the turn. Whoops, that was a bet, obviously. See, this is the problem. I'm talking and I missed a spot. I guess we'll just ship here. This is not ideal, but it's fine. He should have some weak hands that he's merge betting there that'll fold. So essentially, I actually played two hands relatively close together against a weird fish donk line, and for some reason playing them back to back really helped me understand the spot a lot better. So here, we've got overs, but if we had like a 3, we would just call, and I think I am gonna barrel here. It's not the best barrel, but it's fine. This is a check raise, backdoor equity, plus it's a low board, and we'll barrel any like high cards. That's not a good barrel, and we did not pick up any equity, and actually we would only barrel equity here. I misspoke. So actually, I mean, we did pick up a gutter, but we didn't pick up a very strong draw. And once players call the check raise, it's a spot that's, as you can guess, people are folding a lot to check raises. So it could be a spot where we could call with a gutter if we had a pair. I mean, we did have the ace for an overcard, which helps, but that's okay. Oh, shoot. I did not see. This is, again, I just made another small mistake, just an observational thing where I didn't see that. Now, this is not, again, not a huge problem. Just 3-betting a guy who's raising a limper is not like a massive mistake with just about any hand. But it's not what I would normally do. Like I said, I think king 4 is bottom of our button range. So might have been a little tight. The key with those two hands that I was talking about earlier was that in one, the player had to be bluffing. In the other, the player could have been value betting worse, or like spazzing out with a worse made hand, and I was still ahead when I had top pair, good kicker. And what happened is, it ended up that he was spazzing out with like ace three, and I had ace jack, and my kicker played, and I ended up taking a full stack off of somebody. What is going on? So because of that, and this is going to be an auto bet. What the heck is going on? My software seems to be having a little bit of trouble. Again, once somebody calls on the ace, because the ace is relatively overfolded, I don't really expect to get any folds here, so I'm just going to rebuy and give up. And we'll through that. So yeah, that was sort of like this sort of click for me, which was really cool. It was a very strange feeling to lose a big hand, be kind of frustrated, and then a couple hands later have this thing click where all of a sudden I felt great about this stack that I gave away, because I called down with like a pair of sixes in a donk lead line, and it was just this like sort of at the table integration moment where I just totally saw, I just saw it crystal clear, like exactly what the difference between the two hands were, how one was correct, how the other wasn't, what other hands I would have called down with in the other hand. So it was kind of interesting. The guy had trip queens, but I realized that aces and kings would have also been a call down, I believe. It's something I can check with my coach on, but it was a situation where, because he could have been doing something weird with worse hands in that other pot, I think aces or kings would have been a call down, where my pair of sixes weren't, even though like the relative value of the hand should be the same, because most players wouldn't be depolarizing their range, right? They wouldn't be merge betting on a paired board the way that a donk line might. So anyway, it's hard to talk about too much without showing you guys the hands, but it's definitely a cool moment for me. I think once another player calls, that's a call. Maybe not. Maybe it has to be suited. This probably looks pretty weak. Good luck. What is this? MP versus big blind. Big blind versus MP. Oh, never mind. This isn't even close. That was just completely wrong. And this is a spot I was just sort of isolating every single, playable hand here, and now I am completing occasionally, which makes sense. Players are passive enough that they're not going to be ISOing that often from the big blind, and there's a lot of hands that are probably not good enough to raise, but are good enough to flick in the 15 cents to see a flop with. This could be a good spot for a bet, but I'm not sure, so I'm just gonna check fold, and I'm out of position. If I were in position, I would bet any two if I were the guy that just bet. But out of position, I don't think I have enough vision. This is pretty low, and I believe what happened here. Yeah, this is a limp and a big blind, so their ranges are fairly wide. So I actually think I can probably barrel, even though, oops, that was a fold anyway. Even though there's two of them, which makes it a little harder to get through, I have some backdoor equity. I have overcards, and I have like knowledge that their ranges are kind of like wide and probably weak. So normally that wouldn't be a bet, but I think that was okay to bet multi-way there. One thing that's definitely been a weakness that I've talked about before multiple times, is just my ability to connect, pre-flop and post-flop. I have knowledge of what basic pre-flop ranges are. If you say, hey, what's a typical small blind range, I can verbalize it. I can plug it into a grid type, whatever. But I'm not always great at realizing it. And this might look like a good well, I guess this is an auto bet, so we will, but I think the ace is a less than great card to bet. Maybe it's okay. Once they check back, it's overfolded. So we'll bet pretty much any time that the flop checks through and the in position player fails to bet. But an ace is a card that obviously is going to connect with a little bit more of their range than an average card. This is not a check raise, even though we have a backdoor draw. Again, same thing. We'll just bet any two here. And 10-6 suited, getting 2-1. I don't know, it's fairly close, but why not? Again, once he calls, excuse me, the turn, just give up. This guy's donking. We have a pair of sixes, so I typically would raise if I had air, and even with sixes, I think it's kind of a raise sometimes. Now, again, we just want to fold out his air, so I actually think a smaller bet is fine here. We're just protecting our six against overcards, so we don't need a large bet. And that's another adjustment I've made recently, is making sure that I'm using the right bet size for the job, for what I'm trying to accomplish, not using just the standard bet sizes, especially on the turn. I would say that I use the standard bet size on the flop like 90% of the time. Really, I only change it when it's multi-way. But on the turn, I've started sizing my bet for the goal I'm trying to accomplish with my specific hand. Yep. So open-ended, but obviously there's a three flush out there. If it checks around to me, I'll bet no matter what. Again, I don't know, mental thing. I like to make it $1 instead of 75 cents. When it's not $1, I feel like sometimes people call more. That is probably completely anecdotal and not true, but I don't think it makes a significant difference either way. Just hovering over this, waiting to fold if anybody opens, so that I can try to maximize my hands per hour as much as possible. So I'm always kind of trying to stay on top of it. Doesn't always happen. Again, we're up against some pretty wide ranges, so I do have incentive to fold out overcards here. We're completely done with this hand now. And this is a donk that, while if I had hit a queen here, I would call, which I might not against a non-donk. That is just such a code red card, and my hand is so far down in the range that it's a fold. Otherwise, I would be very tempted to look that up. But again, when a code red card comes and guy comes out like potting it, especially like on the river, almost as much so on the turn. This was a check anyway, which is fine. Pre-flop caller. This is pretty close to a check raise with the equity I have, and the fact that he only made it 25 cents, and the fact that I timed out. Sometimes people just throw a quarter out there when you time out to try and take it down. It's not. I never intentionally try to. I never intentionally try to time out for that reason, but if it does accidentally happen, it's good to know that sometimes people will throw that quarter out there in case you're still sitting out. Again, this is a donk into 2 players. Yeah, nah, I don't trust that that's actually a value hand. If he calls this, then that's totally different. But I just don't trust the donk, even if it's into 2 players. I don't have a lot of equity, so my hand functions a lot better as a bluff. Also kind of tempting to bet here, but we'll check, try to hit a king or a queen. And if he checks again, I'm still gonna check back. He has too much. He has too many like weak hands that can still call in his range, I think. Same thing here. Just check raise. This is not, again, this is like a very medium check raise hand. Now we do get a 4, an 8 out turn, so I'll go ahead and barrel. And obviously tempting to jam here because we have some blockers and 9 high. But again, against a fish, I think this guy will call with like ace 5 or ace 7. I've seen people call it way too many times with like 1 pair in a spot like that. And you could argue that sizing up to betting over the pot could be the right answer. I still have seen a lot of like way more than you would expect to see. I see people calling even over bets with like 2nd, 3rd, 4th pair, and now I'm laying myself a worse price to get just owned by a player who has no idea what he's doing, which is then going to lead to me being frustrated and then possibly making more mistakes. So it's just, in the long run, I just think you make more money giving up in spots like that. At least that's the pattern I've found so far. Here is a pretty standard call against a short stack. I'm not sure if a re-raise is any good. I guess we can call, and if somebody ships, we could fold. He does show up with queens here, but that's, again, I think it's fairly standard to call against a short stack doing that. Not even going to really think twice about it. Which is another... I made another video. I don't even know if I've actually uploaded it yet, but it was where I was kind of talking about how, it's good to play with sort of like almost like an abstract confidence. We turned some outs here, so we're gonna barrel. And we're getting 3-bet, this is a huge squeeze. 6, 7, 8, 9. We have position, so I'm just gonna call this. And we have the top, unless he has 9, 10, that's fine. This fold's okay. Calling's okay too. So here, I'm not so sure he calls with anything. I'm just gonna bet half pot, and hopefully he calls for a split. Which apparently is true. I haven't really been in the habit of looking at what people had because it matters so little. I'm not even at the table with them. So I figure it's better to just kind of not distract myself with it for now. And then, in a couple days when I get the hands and go to look through stuff, I'll, remember it and see what happened. But until then, I don't really think there's a lot of benefit in looking at what people called with, what they had. Because I'm not at the table with them. Obviously, not a great barrel card, and we don't turn any equity. It's actually not a terrible card, but right, because it's pretty bad if he has anything other than just naked overcards. And here I'm really tempted to bet, but again, I think he just calls with a 7. He calls with 6s, 5s. Which we block both of those. He's obviously never folding. That's like right there. That we'll call it compulsion to bluff is something I am working really hard to overcome. Because that is, even today, I've been making bets on the river that I know are fall into that category of forced aggression or like compulsion. And sometimes it's just so hard when a player pretty much shows you how capped their range is to not take a shot when you know you have no chance of winning with 6 high or 9 high or something. However, over and over again, I am reminded that people call too light. And the answer is just to size up, your value bets. And I suppose bet relatively thin in those same spots. And size up those bets because people are just calling way too wide. Again, just kind of wait for it to time down a minute. Pretty standard double barrel. Worse hands can be calling queen 10, ace jack. I mean, there's plenty of stuff that can call. Here, the 4 is a pretty good card. The board's fairly connected, but this is still a pretty good double barrel spot when the 4 comes. And again, this is a spot where I might normally kind of think that we're in trouble or going to get value on by ace queen. That'll happen sometimes, but we'll also get like looked up by like queen 6 and things like that. River's not perfect, but it's not too bad. Queen 6 is not like a bad call either. But again, I think we get looked up by even worse than that. I'll look at that one just to see what we're talking about. It takes a while to get to it for some reason. He had ace jack. So I said, you'll get looked up by things like, queen 6 and ace jack, and ace jack even called the river. He called a triple barrel with ace jack. That's pretty good. And I didn't size my bets down at all. I just used standard, which is 1/3 on the flop, 70% on the turn, and 75% on the river, I think is what my bets are set for. There. And I would say that that's a good spot to find reciprocity or whatever. I think that is a Elements of Poker term. And it also might be in some other books, but pretty much it's a situation where you make more money than your opponent. And I think in both ways, we make more money than our opponent there. I think we will fold the river in that spot to our opponent and save money. And I think that our opponent sometimes won't actually bet the... I think that, sometimes your opponent won't actually bet the king queen. They'll just check behind. Or sometimes they'll bet smaller. So I think we actually make a little bit of money there. All right, this video is 30 minutes. I think it was actually pretty jam-packed. This is the check raise. Let's go ahead and do that. We do get called. Because this is a weird donk, this is still a weird donk line. We have to call this. We're too high up in our range against a very... and obviously now we're not folding. Rejoin hand. And the thing is this will occasionally be, this is going to be better sometimes, but it's king 3. This is wow, what a great hand to go out on. That is just not a call that I'm capable of making 3 days ago or 5 days ago. I would just, I would think that was spew to call there. And maybe not when I hit 2 pair on the river. But it's, I don't know, it's just interesting, right? So, we probably do fold if we don't hit the 2 pair since we're not quite high up enough. But that's a spot where against a reg, out of position, against an in position triple barrel, like a raise and then a triple barrel, we absolutely have to be folding, and then it changes completely when it's some sort of weird, bizarre volatile. That's the word that I really liked that that Nick used when we were doing our coaching session, was the volatile fish line. So anyway, guys, I think that's a pretty good hand to go out on. I'm gonna restart everything because my table tamer is acting a little funny. We'll sit out next big blind, finish up a couple hands, take a very short break. This is pretty cool. We pretty much, I think, doubled up on both tables. God, like, think about how, I mean, it's just, I don't know. I mean, I know I just sort of click call, and we did talk about the hand a little bit, but, like, think about that. If you have king 3 suited, like, what are you doing jamming the river there? Like, what thought process is that? And I hope this guy folds. I mean, I guess we're pretty much up against pocket pairs if he doesn't. So, seems like a pretty easy c-bet for a third pot, and hopefully he folds any pair less than 9s. If we get raised here, we're in a like pretty easy fold spot, just because his range is like, I don't know, suited connectors, pocket pairs a lot. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. It's my first video in a while. I felt like I really wanted to focus on getting hands in, studying, integrating, and then kind of come back, and so you guys probably will see a significant difference in my play a little bit just between like the last video, whatever that was, and then today, and that'll happen like every couple weeks when I have sort of like a little bit of a level up sort of effect from like a real big coaching session where we find some serious leaks. So yeah, pretty cool session. I'm gonna get back to it in just a minute, and yeah, I will see you guys next time. Until then, keep on grinding.